Dads on a Budget vinyl. I appreciate you, music lovers, one and all, friends, family. I'm glad that you're here with us tonight, hanging out. A couple of things to get excited about tonight. We've got a new angle, right? Based on some feedback that I got from you guys, different camera angle, and raise things up a little bit higher. Thanks, Noel. And so here we are back, and tonight we're going to talk about Andrew Bird, and that's another thing to get excited about. This past week, his first two Bowl of Fire albums, Thrills and Oh the Grandeur, released in 98 and 99 respectively, were first released or finally released on vinyl for the first time this past week. And so I got those in the mail. We're going to be talking about those, but let's talk about Andrew Bird. Andrew Bird is another one of those true original American artists. And yes, music is derivative, and everything that we hear reminds us of this or reminds us of that. And there are things in his music that will remind you of other things, but he's an original. There's nobody else that sounds like him. Andrew Bird, at 4 years old, began to learn the violin using the Suzuki method. And if you don't know anything about that, it's pretty interesting. Shinichi Suzuki was a violin player and violin seller, and would do violin lessons and all kinds of things, trying to sell violins and promote violins, and came up with a method for learning the violin kind of based on the idea that children at a young age are able to pick up on their native language very easily, and adapted that thought process to learning the violin based on the sounds and the notes rather than where it is on the scale or what note is what. And obviously it worked for Andrew Bird, because by 1996, he was graduating from Northwestern with a bachelor's degree in violin performance. And so about that same time, playing in and around the area, his native Chicago, but also going back and forth between Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where there was a big swing music resurgence going on, and the violin obviously fits right in with that. Began to play with some local ensembles, ended up playing with the Squirrel Nut Zippers and recording with them on 3 of their records during that really peak success period that they had. But by 1998 had broken away and formed his own swing ensemble called Andrew Bird's Bowl of Fire. That's one of the things that we're celebrating tonight. This was their first record in 1998. Andrew Bird's Bowl of Fire. Check that out. So, pre-war jazz, swing, calypso, zydeco. There are elements of Cab Calloway, Don Redman, Tiny Tim, but also, Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli with that beautiful violin. But this album, very tongue-in-cheek, a lot of talent, okay? And the folks that play on this with Andrew Bird, Kevin O'Donnell, Josh Hurst, James Mathis, Catherine Whalen, Jack Fine. These are people that he had already played with in the Squirrel Nut Zippers, doing something a little bit different with Bowl of Fire. And this is a wonderful record. And to come out in 98 and to finally be reissued or issued on vinyl for the first time 25 years later. But that speaks to its popularity since, and it's now kind of recognized as a classic. And if you love Andrew Bird, you kind of have to have this. But it's a wonderful record. Minor Stab is great. Ides of Swing, Glass Tangerine, Pathétique, Depression, Pasillo, 50 Pieces, and everything is it's like having, let's see, it's like seeing a pre-war 1938-ish, maybe 1939 jazz band in Paris. maybe with a couple of Romanian gypsy players sitting in with them on the side. I mean, it's just wonderful music, got a lot of energy and it drives. It's really wonderful, but never takes itself too seriously. There's a song called Gree Gree, and there's a Cock of the Walk. But there's also like the Swedish Wedding March, which is just absolutely gorgeous. So get things started with Thrills. Next up would be 1999's Oh the Grandeur, and this is another one that just got released on vinyl for the first time. And it's another wonderful record. We'll take a look at it real quick too. I love the font, I love the graphics. This is it's a 2-album set, but that fourth side is an etching, and it has to do with this clown right here, which I'm not really sure I get, and I'm not even really sure that I like. Clowns kind of creep me out a little bit, but there is an etching on the back that's pretty cool nonetheless. But oh, the Grandeur follows much the same vein that Thrills did. I think I like Thrills a little bit more, but I like both of them just fine. Fun, quirky, danceable, just a lot of fun. In 2000, Andrew Bird came out with his third Bowl of Fire record, third and final Bowl of Fire record. And it's not been released on vinyl. So this is it, The Swimming Hour. This is it on Rykodisc. I'll tell you what, real quick, I'll buy anything on Rykodisc, just about, right? They're just such a tasteful label. But this album is a complete departure from those first two. The pre-war jazz and the swing and that type of thing is gone. This is more of a folk type record. But the violin is still there. It's a much more intimate setting without the full band playing. But the electric guitar is here as well. There are actual electric guitar solos on this record where you wouldn't have found one on the first two. And this record's all over the place. It's rockier. It's got folk. It's got rock. It's got that kind of an indie sound. Calypso, Zydeco. Andrew Bird refers to this as his jukebox record because it's got so many different types of things on it. I listened to it on the way to work this morning and on the way home. What really struck me on the second listen through is Core and Grind really kind of reminds me of a Donovan song. It's got that psychedelic guitar and that kind of a quirky vocal, but really, really cool. 1111 is more of a rock song, but there's some beautiful music on here, and it definitely points the light in the direction that Andrew Bird would take as a solo artist. But at the time, he's still in Bowl of Fire, which again is a loose collective of musicians that play in and around that area, and they're all involved with other projects, and so it's hard to get a gig together. And when they do get a gig together, they might be playing for 30, 40, 50 people, right? So they do finally, in 2002, they get an opportunity to be the opening act for a pretty sizable show in Andrew Bird's hometown of Chicago. More exposure, it's going to be a big deal, right? And things are looking good. And a couple of days before the show, Andrew finds out that Kevin O'Donnell and several of the members of the band, matter of fact, all of the members of the band are not going to be able to make the show. So Andrew reluctantly agrees to do the show solo, and he puts together his drum loops and his tape loops and his pedal effects and his various arsenal. And a lot of artists at the time were doing that same thing. Ani DeFranco was doing that to great effect. Beck was doing that to great effect. Imogen Heap was doing that to great effect. And so it wasn't a new idea. And of course, people had been entertaining the crowds with, an instrument and a voice for years. So to be able to do it with these electronic elements added, really cool thing. And that's what Andrew Bird did. And the show went over really, really well. He mesmerized the audience. They loved it. His violin playing, his whistling. Yes, he is a professional whistler. His wonderful tenor voice, his stream of consciousness lyrics, his tape loops and his effects. Everything is coming together. And that night it really came together well. And the next thing you know, Andrew Bird, the solo artist, is born. And man, what a wonderful thing it is. So doesn't it just show you that good things come out of bad situations? Okay. I'm pretty sure at that point in time, he viewed that as, oh man, I got to pull this off alone. But he did it. He did it brilliantly. And here we go. So that's 2002. Not long after that, he comes out with his first proper solo record called Weather Systems. And it's a great album. It's more of the same, really. It's kind of like Swimming Bowl continued. But really, I saw him interviewed later on in interviews where he said that was the album that he put out just to really kind of satisfy himself that he was doing something and moving forward while he actually worked on this album, The Mysterious Production of Eggs. The Mysterious Production of Eggs. We have chickens right now, and boy, I could talk for a while about the mysterious production of eggs. Isn't that incredible, right? But let's talk about this record for a moment. As a matter of fact, let's talk about something else for just a sec. So I wonder if there are those of you that have an artist or two or three in their record collection. You don't really remember them getting there, but they found a home in your record collection, and before long, they multiplied and had babies, and they went from an album to two or three or seven. And one day you realize, wow, I've got a lot of this person's music. That's the way it is for me with Andrew Bird. I can't remember. This is where it all started for me, Mysterious Production of Eggs. But I can't really remember who turned me on to it. It's probably one of two different things. In the mid to late 90s, I was a huge fan of a radio program out of Santa Monica's radio station, KCRW. It was hosted by Nick Harcourt, and it was called Morning Becomes Eclectic. And it was just a wonderful program, and I'd never heard anything like it before in my life. I mean, it was like a radio station with no rules. You'd hear a Billie Holiday song, followed by a Shen song. And, you know, the artists that I was turned on to through listening to that radio station, Ed Harcourt and the No Twist and the Shins, and my mind's going blank right now, but Joseph Arthur and so many different wonderful artists I was turned on to through that program. And I couldn't, you know, streaming, we were doing dial-up still at the time. I couldn't stream anything, and it was hard for me to get the show. So I would go to their website and I would download their playlist. And just based on, you know, if you like this, you'll like that type of thing. If it was on that playlist, I pretty much loved it. If Nick Harcourt signed off on it, I was ready to pretty much buy it. Of course, you didn't buy it. You downloaded it through Napster and listened to it, and if you fell in love with it, you went and bought it then. And that's what I did with a lot of that music, though. And I kept seeing the song, the Andrew Bird song, So They. Okay. At the same time, I was really into music rags. Rolling Stone sucked by then, and so did Spin. But I was really into Uncut and Mojo. Paste was a great magazine. And these magazines would come out with these CD comps. They would either, you know, feature music that were put out by artists that were featured in the magazine that month, or, you know, they might have an Eric Clapton cover story, so they might have Eric Clapton pick 15 of his favorite songs for the CD or whatever. But it was a great way to get turned on to new artists. And in all three of those magazines, Uncut, Paste, Mojo, and a Starbucks comp that I bought, all featured Andrew Bird music. And so I was at the library one day and I was flipping through and I saw the CD of this and I thought, that looks interesting. And then I saw that it was Andrew Bird. I was like, let me check that out and take that home. And before long, I had the album in my collection. This is still one of my favorites, if not my favorite Andrew Bird. It all comes together for me on this album. So all of those other elements that we mentioned before, but also now things like Rufus Wainwright and Beck, and just beautiful and melodic and layered and baroque and just gorgeous without being too highbrow, without being too, oh, I forget the word that I was thinking about earlier. But anyway, it's beautiful music without taking itself too seriously. Stream of consciousness lyrics sung really, really well. Instrumentation is beautiful. Pop elements should have been all over something. I can't really say the radio, but it should have been all over something. So beautiful, beautiful song. The nervous tick motion of the head to the left. What a great song that is. Fake palindromes. A lot of this music could have been used, and I don't mean to put it in a pigeonhole, but it could have been used on some of the soundtracks like, Grey's Anatomy or 6 Feet Under or, whatever. But just wonderful, quirky, beautiful music like that. Opposite Day, which is one of my favorite tracks. Skin Is My, which is something that he would later on revisit and kind of dice up a little bit. And ends with a happy birthday song, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But Mysterious Production of Eggs, check it out. It's still pretty cheap. It can be had pretty easily. I believe it was reissued again a few years back. And it's a beautiful record. It really is. So 2005, Mysterious Production. 2007, we've got, now, Mysterious Production of Eggs and the record that came out before it, we were talking about that solo show thing with Ani DiFranco. Andrew Bird actually signed with her Righteous Babe label for the release of those first two records. But now we've moved on to Armchair Apocrypha on Fat Possum Records. And Fat Possum is another one of those labels. It's just like I was talking about Rykodisc earlier. If I see Fat Possum on something, I'm always at the very least interested. But this is Mysterious Production of Eggs on steroids in a good way. The production is bigger. The songs are a little denser. They might be a little bit darker, whereas the Mysterious Production of Eggs is pretty whimsical in a really wonderful way. This is a little darker. Our Armchair Apocrypha, as the title would suggest. And, the back of his head is all we get. But the songs that are on this, and you may be familiar with a few of these. You've got Fiery Crash, Emetosis, Plasticities, Heretics. For me, I love Cataracts, Scythian Empires, and the Sparrows are just really wonderful, wonderful tracks. But this is another one of those records that you can put on, really, really get into headphone style, or you can put on and clean the house to. Either way, it's enjoyable, and it's absolutely wonderful. So after Armchair, we had Noble Beast. Then he signs with Mom and Pop Records and comes out with Break It Yourself, which I only had on CD for quite some time. Then finally, Record Store Day, they released this picture disc. It's the only one that I have, but I feel like if you're going to own only one picture disc, it should by God be Andrew Bird, okay? I've listened to this a couple of times and it sounds really good. But I think it's a lot of fun. And Break It Yourself is more of the same, and I don't mean that in a bad way. There's no real departure here from the songwriting styles of either production or Armchair. But still a wonderful record. If you like Andrew Bird, by now you've bought in, and by now, you want to hear those new things, and that was an absolutely wonderful record. In 2014, so Break It Yourself, Mom and Pop was 2012, 2014. You've got Things Are Really Great Here, sort of. Right. So along the way, Andrew Bird formed a really wonderful friendship with the Handsome family. If you know the Handsome family, if you don't know the Handsome family, they're kind of like, how do I describe them? They're not really Appalachian, but they've listened to a lot of Appalachian music. Backwoods, kind of dark, kind of macabre, noirish, really pretty dark and pretty bleak from time to time. Andrew Bird covers, he does a whole album of their covers. Obviously, their songwriting is very deep, and he takes those songs in a way that really only he could do, and really he has to do because that's who he is and that's how his music comes out. He makes them he uplifts them slightly and makes them slightly more accessible while keeping everything really deep. And there was something in here, I don't want to get bogged down or go down a rabbit hole, but I thought this was really beautiful. This was Rennie Sparks of the Handsome Family. They're a mother, not a mother, father and husband and wife songwriting and musical team. And Rennie, the wife, wrote this of Andrew Bird. We're deeply honored to have Andrew Bird record our work. I hope you, dear listener, find your ears awoken by these wonderful recordings. I hope they instill with you a greater sense of how we musicians inspire each other. All songs, after all, are a response to some call. We're all listeners when we're at our best. May these songs and this recording open a new doorway in the familiar hallway of your everyday life. I love that. Let the mere act of listening unmoor you from your narrow berth. Travel with us to a bigger, more resonant world called Andrew Bird. So when an artist is going to take your music and redo your music, for you to come along with a review of that reworking that's that glowing, I think speaks volumes for the artist. And so Andrew Bird, things are really great here, sort of. This is a wonderful thing. You don't need to be a completist to own it. It's a wonderful addition either way you go. So let's see. This came out in Wegawam, which I believe is an offshoot of Andrew Bird's publishing company. Could be wrong about that. But then in 2016, we've got Are You Serious? Now this should have been the record that made Andrew Bird a household name. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what, we don't really have the radio or the Billboard Hot 200, whatever the case may be, in real time these days to gauge a record other than it's like Taylor Swift or Katy Perry or whatever the case may be. But you know, whatever constitutes being a hit these days, this should have been it. This came out in 2016. It's a pop record, but it's so much smarter and so much better delivered and heartfelt and wonderful than your average pop music. It's a crime that it didn't make Andrew Bird a household name. The first song, Capsized, as well as, you know, could have been a hit. It could be on many soundtracks. It could be the theme song to a really cool TV show. It certainly could be a hit, but it's a fantastic song. Romathade is a fantastic song. Truth Lies Low, Chemical Switches is a great song. Andrew Bird will talk about being in the shower, pardon me, and just kind of, you know, he calls it speaking in tongues. And I'm going to air quote that because that's not really what speaking in tongues is, but just stream of consciousness, just start talking and come up with words and interesting rhymes and things that sound good, and not necessarily $5 words, but certainly some 4 and 5 syllable words. And so his lyrics never really take themselves that seriously. But in their nothingness, sometimes they have kind of an everythingness. I think you understand what I mean by that. So track 2 kicks off with Left-Handed Kisses. Left-Handed Kisses is a track that he does with Fiona Apple. I'm a big fan of Fiona Apple. In a lot of my videos, I'll say, stop what you're doing right now. You're already on YouTube anyway. Go and check this out. Go and check out Andrew Bird and Fiona Apple doing Left-Handed Kisses. It's a wonderful video. It's really well put together. Their performances are awesome and quirky and cool, and only an Andrew Bird, Fiona Apple type of way. But that's a brilliant song. Are You Serious is another one that could have been on the radio. Saints Preserve Us. So, I would say, although Mysterious Production is probably my pound for pound favorite Andrew Bird, I would say that maybe Are You Serious might be his most accessible. This record comes with a little 7-inch, which is really cool. A side is Shoulder Mountain, B side is Pulaski. Pulaski. You'll see Andrew Bird mention Pulaski, Tennessee quite a bit in his writings, Pulaski at Night. But that's a wonderful, little, cool little package and a nice little addition to it. Next up after that, we've got My Finest Hour from 2019. This is, first of all, look at that album cover. There's a really good photo of Andrew Bird. The songs on this: Sisyphus, Bloodless, Olympians, Crackling Codes. Well, okay, so let me back up a moment. This is recorded direct to tape. The sound, even though the music is not similar, the sound that he wanted to go for was that classic sound of those Blue Note records that were recorded and engineered by Rudy Van Gelder in the late 50s and throughout the 60s, really. That wonderful, spacious sound. And that's what is received here. It's a wonderful, wonderful record. And was nominated for a Grammy. I don't think that it won, but it's another wonderful addition. My Finest Work, Andrew Bird. Love that cover. Okay, so 2020. What do you do next? Well, you put out a Christmas record. Lots of people put out Christmas records. I love Christmas records if they're well done. This is actually one of my favorite, even though I've only had it in my Christmas season now for, I think this will be its 3rd year. This came out in 2020. This is Hark. I saw the cover. Well, it was Andrew Bird, but I saw the cover and just absolutely loved it. I believe his daughter drew that. Don't hold my feet to the fire on that. This is another one. It's just really cool, really well designed. Inside, there are these little punch out, because of course you need these birds, okay? And you get 3 sheets of these, as if one weren't enough. So you get a dozen birds, I guess for the 12 days of Christmas, maybe? I don't know. But this is a wonderful record. And Andalusia, you guys have seen me talk about oh my gosh, Paris 1919, John Cale, A Child's Christmas in Wales, and you've also got Andalusia, which is covered on this record. Alabaster, Green Wine, Christmas in April, Souvenirs, Oh Holy Night. It's just an absolutely beautiful record. And it's also got Skating from the Charlie Brown Christmas special. That's a Vince Guaraldi trio. I love that recording. And Andrew really does it justice. So the Andrew Bird Christmas album, who knew, right? And this is still available, so check it out. Christmas is right around the corner. This would be a really nice addition to your collection. I love that drawing, in case I didn't get up on there close enough. So it wasn't long after this record came out that my wife and I went to go see a Drive-By Truckers show at the Princess Theater here in Decatur. And the warm-up act was Jimbo Mathis. No bells are going off. He's got a great show, though. Psychedelic and country and folk and blues and just everything rolled up into one package, and really great. And at intermission, I went out to buy some merch, and actually went out to buy this record, Incinerator by Jimbo Mathis. And I asked him, so you got anything else coming out? And he's like, yeah, I've got an album coming out with Andrew Bird next week. I'm like, Andrew Bird? Shut the front door. What are you talking about? Because at this time, man, I mean, I love Andrew Bird, but at this point, a couple of years ago, I was just like, rah. And like I said, I had just gotten this. I was really on an Andrew Bird high. So Jimbo's like, yeah, I've got a record coming out with him next week. I'm like, what? And so, of course, ding dong, he proceeds to educate me. Jimbo Mathis is the same James Mathis that founded the Squirrel Nut Zippers, and they're playing together goes back almost 30 years. So, of course, Jimbo Mathis knows Andrew Bird. I can't believe it. I felt like I felt like an idiot talking to him. But of course, Jimbo made me feel right at home and told me a lot about the record that was coming out, and I couldn't wait. And just a few weeks later, literally just a couple of weeks later, we were gifted this Mathis Bird, These 13. I couldn't believe it. I mean, sometimes I really can't believe how small the circle actually is, okay, at the end of the day. But this is Jimbo and Andrew, and it's different. It's a little bit more laid back. It's a little bit more old school. It's a little darker, a little bit deeper. It's called These 13, and I can't help but wonder, Jimbo's from Mississippi and very heavy into Southern lore. And looking at the album cover, I can't help but wonder if maybe 13 Alabama Ghost didn't inspire this on some level. But I love that. There's Jimbo and Andrew. If you don't know Jimbo Mathis, do a quick YouTube search. I'm telling you, he did the swing music thing, but also country blues. I mean, he toured exclusively with Buddy Guy for like 16 years and has recorded a ton of different stuff. But again, never strays too far from that psychedelic country. I mean, it's like Hank Williams on shrooms or something. It's just but it's different and it's really cool. And this was a great record and I'm glad to have it. So next up, and this one's an honorable mention. I mentioned earlier Rufus Wainwright. I'm a huge Rufus Wainwright fan. I've got records of his dad's. I've got records of his. I've got the McGarrigle sisters with Kate and Ann. I'm just a big fan of the whole family, but I love Rufus's stuff. And not long ago, I guess 4, 5, 6 months ago, these days time flies, Rufus came out with a new record, Folkocracy. And I was all in when I saw that Rufus Wainwright had a new record coming out. I didn't realize at the time that was him pairing up with other artists. And, you've got Van Dyke Parks, Chaka Khan, Brandi Carlile, Sheryl Crow, Susanna Hoffs, John Legend. And so I already had it earmarked to purchase the moment that it was available. But then one day in my Facebook feed, an advertisement for it came up. And it featured the song Harvest, the Neil Young song Harvest, as done by Rufus Wainwright with Andrew Bird and Chris Stills. And I love Chris Stills as well, the son of Stephen Stills, wonderful guitar player, amazing harmony singer, and then Andrew Bird on violin and harmony vocals. And what they do with that song will blow your mind. It is absolutely gorgeous, okay? There's a bunch of stuff that we didn't talk about because there's still a few things that I don't have. Andrew Bird in the last year has come out with 2 new solo albums, Inside Problems and then Outside Problems, which is really a reworking of Inside Problems, but recorded instrumentally, I believe. So there's still music for me to have. There's a record that he has called Hands of Glory that's more of a bluegrassy, gospel-y, back porch type of thing. I would love to have that. Christmas is coming up, hint, hint. So there's still a ton of stuff for me to get. I'm definitely an Andrew Bird completist. I'll try to get it all. You know how it is. But listen, I appreciate you hanging tonight. I've had a blast talking about Andrew Bird. Andrew Bird music is absolutely wonderful and amazing. They're wonderful collections to your collection, or wonderful additions to your collection. Brilliant music, wonderful artist. Do yourself a favor, turn yourself on, get yourself some Andrew Bird. Y'all take it easy. I'll look forward to talking to you next time. Bye-bye.